So this is the all-new BMW X5 xDrive 45e M Sport. Yeah, a name that really rolls off the tongue. But despite the word salad used to describe it, it is in fact a very electrifying X5. So why? Well, this big, sturdy SUV is in fact a full-on plug-in hybrid, and a very clever one at that. It's more important than you might think because as of April 2020, plug-in hybrids are going to be taxed not just on CO2 emissions, but also on how far they can drive using electricity. So this particular BMW could save you thousands. But before we get to all of that, please do remember to go to electrifying.com for more information on electrified vehicles. So, what have we got? Well, compared to the old X5 plug-in hybrid, this new one has a battery pack that's jumped from 9.2 kilowatt hours to 24, meaning that it can, in theory, manage up to 54 miles on pure electricity. Now, that is a big deal because the new rules mean that company car drivers of plug-in hybrids that manage over 40 miles of electric range pay just 6% of the car's value per year in benefit in kind tax. Now compare that to 12% for those managing less than 30 miles. So a traditional diesel engine car would pay way more. It basically boils down to a car that could save you hundreds of pounds a month. But let's not forget that if you buy it privately, it also means that most of your commuting can be done on pure EV. Because of course the average commuting distance in the UK is actually usually less than 15 miles each way. So if you can charge at work or at home, then you're going to get serious savings. You're also more likely to only use the petrol engine when you have to travel those further distances or on bigger roads where it is actually more efficient. Or you could use it because, well, it's really quite fast, and I genuinely mean it. Now, under the bonnet is a 3-litre straight-six petrol engine with 282 brake horsepower. Mix and match that with the 111 brake horsepower electric motor that sits in between it, and the 8-speed gearbox just down here, and you get a total output of, calculating it, 389 brake horsepower and 442 pounds per foot of torque. Now that's good for 0 to 62 miles an hour in just 5.6 seconds and top speeds of 146 miles per hour. So if all of that sounds like too many numbers, then please allow me to demonstrate. I've popped it into sport mode, checked my mirrors, ready, steady, go. Not bad. You won't really notice all the hybridiness when you decide to have a bit of fun either. This thing handles pretty much like a normal X5, which means it goes around a corner really quite neatly indeed. The heavy battery is under the floor, so the centre of gravity is low, and of course you can play with all the drive modes to get the best out of the drivetrain. Now you can choose between sport, electric, hybrid and adaptive, and there's also a 5th mode called sport individual, which is hidden in the menus if you want to play about even more. Then of course there's battery hold, which is rather clever because it allows you to fill up the battery to 100% during normal driving, and then you can actually use it later on. So for example, if you're driving into a city and you want to be on your lowest emission, 0 emission on fully electric mode when you're in the city, then you can save the electric juice that you've stored up in the battery for then, which is really clever and really useful. Now, you can also just stick it into adaptive, really simple, put your destination into the sat-nav and the car will actually automatically work out the most efficient way to use the EV bit of its ability. And let's not forget, electric, it does what it says on the tin. And if you drive normally, whatever that may be, then you can get between 35 and 40 miles in the real world. When I've been driving, it's probably been more towards 35, but if you're a slightly more efficient, smarter driver, you can probably just about get 40.
Sport's kind of my favourite though. It makes both the electric motor and the engine work together all the time, and it makes this X5 feel particularly, what's the word, muscular, agile.
It comes with 19-inch wheels as standard, but if you go for this one, the M Sport, you get 22s. And even if they do dent the efficiency a bit, the car still qualifies for its tax breaks. Plus, they look pretty baller. So the reason I mention them, well, they do make the car ride a bit harder, so it's not so good for small ones in the back, or actually my back, come to think of it. It's now time for what we like to call the boring but useful bits.
Now, before even setting eyes on your car, thanks to BMW Connect, you can actually do things like check the state of charge on the car, you can check the location of the car, check to make sure if it's locked, and you can even do things like set the climate control. So on those cold winter mornings, you can make sure you are stepping inside a nice cozy car, which I'm going to do now. Here we go. Set climatization, confirm, sending to vehicle, and there we go. Give it a few minutes and it'll be nice and warm. But out of all the technology that is packed into this plug-in hybrid, my favourite thing has to be the keyless entry. As long as you have the key on you in some capacity, you can carry as much stuff as you possibly can, including the kitchen sink. And yet you just approach. Ah, the joy, the simplicity is brilliant. So immediately when you get inside, it feels comfortable. I love the high seating position of the chair, and then you've got this great big view ahead of you of the road. Of course, you've got the digital instrument cluster that comes as standard, and it just feels like a well-built, super solid car, whilst also feeling quite luxurious, and it's packed full of tech, which I absolutely love. So in the back, plenty of space again. You've got isofix for the outer 2 rear seats. So you can have 2 kid seats in the back. You can't have isofix points in the middle, however. There is also plenty of safety going on, airbags, obviously. Then of course, we've got things like dynamic stability control, dynamic traction control, dynamic brake control, cornering brake control, all the control you could possibly hope for. Although we're still missing dynamic kids control, but we're hoping they're working on that one. Now, one thing I love about this car is the ginormous boot, and also how the tailgate comes down, so you've got really easy access. Now, one thing to note is that because of the battery, the fuel tank has been pushed back, and that's encroached on the boot a little bit, so it is a smidge smaller than the normal X5. Also, you can't get this with the 7-seat configuration, so it is just a 5-seater. Now, I also like this. There's a little cubby hole in the back, and this is where you can keep both charging cables, which come as standard. You've got this one, which is your 3-pin plug, which you can plug into a home socket. And then we've also got this blue, it's called the Type 2, and it's a public charging cable. And let me show you how it plugs in to the car. So just in front of the passenger door, you have your charging port. It's nice and simple. Literally just plug it in to charge. Obviously, I'm not going to do that here because I am in the middle of a wood. Then, of course, you have your petrol filler cap on the other side, exactly where you'd expect to find it.
So, what do we think? Well, let's face it, big SUVs with large petrol engines are probably not the best option if you're looking to make the world a greener place, because compared to an actual full electric vehicle, well, they aren't actually very efficient. They're much better though than a straight large petrol or diesel.
So if you do have to buy an SUV plug-in hybrid, and you do actually regularly plug it in, because that is important, then this X5 is pretty good. It's efficient to drive, it's got the electric range, it's not that subtle to look at, but I quite like that about it. And it's not the biggest on the inside compared to its rivals, but there's plenty of space for me, my son, and all of his stuff.
Of course, if you're thinking about the X5 plug-in hybrid, then you may also want to check out our other videos of the Volvo XC90 twin engine and the Porsche Cayenne e-hybrid.